Hi friends and happy Pride Month. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 10 LGBTQIA plus books. I'm actually pretty spoiled for choice in terms of queer literature in Iceland. We have a whole section in my local library dedicated to LGBT books, and so it's very easy to find queer literature, and it's something that I really enjoy reading. I think last year about 25 to 30% of my reading was falling under the LGBT books category, and so it's something that I really enjoy, and it was really difficult actually to pare this list down to just 10 books. So I have a couple of honourable mentions and then I have my top 10 as it were, which is honestly in no particular order. I haven't ranked these or anything, it's just 10 of my favourite LGBT books. So let's get into it. So I think the best place to start is to start with some honourable mentions. So I'll just kind of run through these briefly and explain why they're honourable mentions. So the first book is The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta, and this is a novel in verse written for a YA audience or a new adult audience. It follows our protagonist who moves from school to university and is sort of trying to discover their own identity, discover their own place, and like how they feel about themselves and sort of accepting themselves. It's very much a coming of age narrative. Our protagonist becomes involved with the drag society after spending some time trying out various different societies at university. And it's just a very wholesome, very lovely narrative. The main character is very lovable. It's just really a joy to read, and it's definitely one I would recommend. I also have XX by Angela Chadwick, which is a dystopian novel. This won the Polari Prize I think in 2018 or 2019, and it's just a fabulous read. It's published by Dialogue Books in the UK, fantastic publisher. Polari Prize, a fantastic literary prize to pay attention to. It's a British literary prize that celebrates LGBT books, and it's one that I'm always kind of watching for their shortlist and long list. I think their long list comes out later this month, so I'll put details to that down below. But yeah, fabulous prize. And XX is about a dystopian world in which women no longer require men to have children, and it follows this lesbian couple as they navigate this world in which they're one of the first people to have a child without a man, and it follows them and the backlash they receive and the press coverage, and their day-to-day lives becoming parents. It's just a fabulous read. It's really well written, really well told, a really interesting concept, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. The next book on this honourable mentions list is The Perfect World of Miwako Sumida, and this is a fantastic book. It has a trans character who is one of the central narratives, central points of view that we receive. It's a dual perspective novel, so there are several points of views that we receive, but it's just really well told story, partially about family but also about trauma and moving on. I don't want to say too much about it for fear of giving away something that's not already in the blurb, but it's just a very interesting, unique story, and I really liked it. It's very heavy hitting, so go in having checked content warnings, but yeah, it's definitely one I would recommend. I've also put on my honourable mentions list a title called Our Lives, Our Words by A. Revathi, and this is a really hard-hitting non-fiction book which follows a group of trans people. We get sort of singular narratives. It's like sort of short essays all about their experiences of being trans in India, and it is a very difficult read because a lot of the sort of stigma and backlash they receive is really hard to read about, and they also experience quite a lot of abuse and things, so be aware going into the book that there are a lot of heavy topics covered. But it is a very worthwhile read, especially if you want to read a narrative about being trans out with of the UK and US perspectives, because that's why I picked it up, and I'm really glad that I did. It was very insightful and a very worthwhile read, and I would recommend it. This author has also written a book called something like A Year in Trans Activism. I'll put the cover on the screen. I haven't read that one yet, but I would like to, and that follows more their own life as a trans person in India. So yeah, definitely an author to keep an eye out for. And the last one of my honourable mentions is Take Nothing With You by Patrick Gale. Patrick Gale is a British novelist who writes these very interesting characters and very unique narratives. So it's set in two kind of timelines. In the first timeline, we're following them as a small child and meeting a gay couple and kind of understanding themselves, learning about their queerness and learning to accept themselves. And in the other timeline, we are following this character in the future, and they are undergoing treatment for cancer, and it's about kind of this new relationship that they've just developed, but then also going through this treatment, and then he's flashing back to this youth and kind of replaying his life. It's a very, very heartfelt book. It's full of emotion. It's really easy to connect with our main character because they are very likeable, but they're also very unique and unlike any other character I have read in literature. So there's also a strong component of music in this book. So if you like music in books, you might enjoy this one just purely for that point. I'm not sure where to start with this list, so I'm just going to start at the top of where I've written it down on my little notepad. And that is with my beloved Jackie Kay and their novel Trumpet. I really, really love this novel. It follows a family who has just lost the father in the family, and this man has been living as a trans man, unbeknownst to their community, unbeknownst to their child even. And when they die, there's a coroner's report, the funeral director I think it is, who examines the body, and when they write what I think is like a eulogy or something for the paper, they put in it that actually this individual has been living as a trans person, and they misgender them in the announcement, and it sets off a whole kind of shock reaction within the community. It completely destroys the relationship that the father and the son had, and it's like following really the fallout of that. It's a very difficult read, but it's also just a very, very beautifully told story. I absolutely love the way Jackie Kay writes about love. It's so pure, and it's so basically what I feel is such a true representation of what love really is. And I love Jackie Kay's writing, but this novel in particular is just absolutely stunning. It completely blew me away. And I've read 3 or 4 other writings from Jackie Kay since and really enjoyed them all. So definitely a writer in general to watch and to read from, but this title I would say is my favourite of Jackie Kay's publications. Next up, I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. In I Wish You All the Best, we follow a young person who is coming to terms with the fact that they are non-binary and who's sort of figuring out their sexuality. There's a bit of a love story in this. There's a lot of like friendships and family connections, especially between our main character and their sister. I really, really loved Mason Deaver's writing style. I think they have a very sort of readable style, and I've since read I'll Be Home for Christmas, which is a spin-off novella, Christmas novella, with the same characters as in I Wish You All the Best. I just really, really enjoy these characters. I think they are really sweet and lovely and lovable, and it's very easy to get kind of caught up in reading about this. There's also conversations about mental illness, and I think that the way Mason Deaver approaches it is the kind of thing that I really love to see in YA, and I'm especially glad that this is a narrative that we are seeing, and I'm hoping that non-binary youth will see themselves in this book. But to me, it was one I read really quickly. I absolutely loved it, and I would highly recommend it. Now for a book that I read really recently. This is The Split by Laura Kay, and I absolutely love this book. I think I'm going to say that for all of the books on this list. But this follows a young woman who has just broken up with her girlfriend, and she moves back home from London to Sheffield to be with her dad and to regroup and kind of find her feet again. While back at home, she reconnects with an old friend, and this friend convinces her to sign up to a local 10k race and take part with them. And it follows their friendship as they train for this run and as they go on this run, and they join a local running group, and it's about the relationships with the running group. There is a romance subplot, but I would say the majority of this is about the friendships that are made and about this young woman reconnecting with herself, rediscovering what she wants from life, and kind of recalibrating and reassessing what she really wants. And I think it was just so beautifully told. I absolutely loved it, and I found myself really connecting with the character, really getting engrossed in the narrative, and I just did not want this book to end. So whatever Laura Kay publishes next, I will be reading it. I absolutely love this and look forward to more. Next up, we have Confessions of the Fox by Jordy Rosenberg. This follows a trans professor who works within a university, and one day he stumbles across this manuscript, and he believes that the manuscript will completely change the way we view history, the way we view gender in history, and just in general completely change the world. And because of this, he sort of harbours the manuscript away and is very kind of secretive about it, but he's sharing it with us through this book. So essentially what we get is the manuscript, And then in the footnotes is the commentary between the professor and their editor, I believe, or their head of department. I'm not sure exactly, I can't remember exactly who it was. It's been about a year since I read this, but it was unlike anything I had read before. And I would say, especially if you're like an academic reader, or you have a history in academics or anything like that, you might really enjoy this for the kind of skill that Jordy Rosenberg shows in this book. It is so skillfully written, so well delivered, and for me as a reader, I was totally in awe of what Jordy Rosenberg achieved in this novel. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. The next book on this list is The Deep by River Solomon. This is a Afrofuturist novella. It's a short book, but it really packs a punch. The Deep is an imagining of what would happen to the ancestors of African slaves who were thrown overboard on slave ships when pregnant. So it imagines a world in which there's an underwater world where these people have built a community and built a life, and it is so moving. It is very dark, but it is very moving. We follow our main character who is responsible for holding the memories for the community, and they reflect on what a big responsibility this is because of the pain associated with those memories. But by them carrying them, it allows the community to function on an everyday level. I just thought it was such a beautiful story about trauma, about memory, about communities, about history, and I thought it was so beautiful that they had reimagined this world in which these people have been able to live on. So it was such a beautiful piece of work to come out of what is a very dark period in history, and I rated it 5 stars, thought it was absolutely phenomenal. I want to reread it, but yeah, it's definitely a very heavy read, so do check content warnings before going into it. Another heavy read, and I promise the rest are not all like this, but the next one is The History of Violence by Édouard Louis, and this is translated from the French by Lorin Stein, and this is a book that is about a man who is raped, and it follows their experience in trying to come to terms with life after such a traumatic event. This was on the 2020 International Dublin Literary Award shortlist, which to be honest was probably the only reason I picked it up, because this is not a topic I like to read about at all. I will usually steer clear of any narratives like this, but I think what struck me so much about this while I was reading it was that what Édouard Louis really does, and I think the translation of this is phenomenal, but what they really do is they really interrogate the structures that allow things like this to happen and for justice not to be served. And I have heard Édouard Louis speak in interviews about how that's really their aim with writing literature, is to kind of interrogate structures, interrogate systems, and honestly I've never seen anyone else do it like this, never seen it done so well. It is just fantastic. They explore the reaction of the police to the survivor, and they explore the reaction of the family, and it's just so moving, so well told, just an absolutely phenomenal read. It is extremely difficult reading, but I read it really quickly, which I think was partly because it was so difficult that I kind of wanted to get through the book, but also I think it's because of Édouard Louis' writing style. They totally absorb you in this world. I started to believe these people were real. They felt really real to me, and the whole book was just so well written, so well told, and yeah, I would highly recommend it. I would say read the physical book if you can, because there are lots of subtleties and there are changes in the point of view that we get, which I'm not sure would be captured on audiobook. But yeah, it's a fantastic book and one I would highly recommend. For something a little bit more joyful, how about Let's Talk About Love by Kann. This is a fantastic new adult novel that follows a young black biromantic asexual main character, and it is about the breakdown in their relationship at the start of the book, and how they sort of internalise that aphobia, and then they meet a new individual, and it's about their kind of budding relationship and how they navigate asexuality together, how they kind of speak about that, and ultimately how they form a relationship as two young people. It's very sweet, it's very easy to get engrossed in, it's very pure. There are content warnings for aphobia, racism and mental illness, but on the mental illness one I felt like Kann really does well at talking about therapy. There's a very positive therapy rep within this, and I think that is just perfect for what you want to see in books nowadays. I really loved our main character. I loved their relationship, this budding relationship that they have. And I just thought it was just such a pure, wholesome book, and it's definitely one that I would recommend. Next up is Stay and Fight by Madeline Ffitch. This is one that I read back in 2019, I think. It follows a young woman who goes to live with her partner in Appalachia, and they are supposed to be sort of building a life there for themselves. I think they start living in a caravan, and it's about them trying to build a life. But very early on in the book, the partner leaves her, and it's about how she kind of picks herself up from that, carries on. She meets a lesbian couple who live close by, and it's about their relationships with one another and how they kind of become a sort of community, a sort of family. It's really, really well told. It's unlike anything else I have read, but I really, really loved it. I would recommend this especially if you love character-driven novels. I think it's one of the maybe the best character-driven novels I've ever read. I thought it was really well written. I started it just on a whim. I had got a copy through like what was like a NetGalley, but it wasn't a NetGalley, and it's no longer running today. But I got it through that, and I just started it and thought, let's see what this is like, and ended up just completely consuming it in like a 24-hour or 48-hour period. And I keep meaning to revisit it because the characters have stayed with me. I remember details about this book in a way that I don't always remember for books. And it's just so beautifully told. And again, it really interrogates structures and the structural problems at play, which is something I really love. And yeah, I would highly recommend this. The next book on this list is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. I actually have a full review of this book on my channel, so I will link it up above and down below. But I really love this book. We follow Grace, who wakes up one day and finds that they've got married in Vegas, totally unlike themselves. They're a straight A student, and they're very kind of conscientious, very kind of straight in the line kind of person. And so to wake up and find yourself married is like a huge shock. And it follows their relationship as they get to know each other after being married to one another. And we also have this plot about Grace's parents and the familial pressure that she is under to perform and behave a certain way, and the expectation that's put on her. It's just an absolutely brilliant read. I'll link my full review. There's also in this one positive therapy rep, which is something again that I love, and there's discussions of mental illness, which I thought were really well done and really well handled. It's one of the kind of plus points of the book for me, but overall there's just this really lovely love story between these two individuals. Some of their communications are also through Yuki's podcast that they host, and it's just, yeah, absolutely fab read. The next book on this list is I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shraya, one of my favourite non-fictions from last year. Absolutely loved it. It's about Vivek Shraya's relationship with men, and with male-generated violence, and the difficulties that they experience as a trans woman. And again, it's a book that really interrogates structures and really dives into the toxicity of male-generated violence and of the patriarchy in general. It's the kind of book that really will change the way you look at the world. It's one that I would say is a book that you have to read in your lifetime. I just absolutely loved it. I think it should be essential reading for everyone. I also like that Vivek Shraya talks about themselves, and so in some ways it felt quite memoir-esque, but it is a very short read, and it's one that will really stay with you. I literally think about this book at least once a week. I absolutely loved it, and I have gone on to read several things from Vivek Shraya and really enjoyed them all, so you can't really go wrong with this writer. A lot of their writing deals with gender, race, ethnicity, various different things that kind of identity markers, I guess, and kind of interrogates them. So yeah, it's a fantastic read. I can't recommend it enough. And a little bonus recommendation, because you've stayed to the end of this video, for a short story by Alexander Chi, and that is called The Weddings. And this is a absolutely beautiful story, and in it we follow our main character who is in a long-term committed relationship, and in their state gay marriage has just been legalised, and it follows them kind of sort of wondering whether or not they'd like to get married. They had never previously thought about being married, that was never a possibility, so they'd never really thought about it, and it follows them as a couple navigating this new possibility. Do they want to be married? What do they want? But also you see the reactions of people around them, and our main character realises that while all these people have kind of accepted his relationship, they've never taken it that seriously, because they've never kind of seen it as marriageable, and the weight that's put on marriage, and the fact that our main character couldn't be married. He realises that his friends didn't take his relationship so seriously. So it's a very moving book. It's also about the fetishization of Asian people, and we follow our main character as they go to old friends' weddings, and it brings up memories. I don't want to say too much because it is a short story, but it's absolutely fantastic. It's so well written, and I would highly recommend it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and got some good recommendations. Do you have any recommendations for me? I would love to hear them. This is my little stack behind me of some books that I'm hoping to read this June, with it being Pride Month. But I would love to hear your recommendations of what else you think is worthwhile reading, what else you would add to this list, what are your favourite LGBTQIA+ books. But that's everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.